Hey guys, this is Eliza and welcome back to a new video. So today is ANZAC Day, and if you don't know what that is, if you're not Australian or you just haven't heard of it before, ANZAC Day is basically the day that we set aside to commemorate the soldiers who fought for us throughout nearly all of the wars. It celebrates Australian and New Zealand soldiers who fought, and that's about the basis of it. It's obviously a really big deal here in Australia, and it's something that's very close to a lot of us, especially the ones who know the stories of their ancestors who did fight in World War I, World War II, at Gallipoli, at Milne Bay, like all of them. So as someone who is quite interested in their own family history, I've done a lot of research. I know my family tree on both sides back nearly 8 generations. So for those reasons, I love reading historical fiction, especially, well, mostly based around World War I and World War II. Most of the books I've read, I'm pretty sure, are World War II. It's a little less likely to find a World War I based book, especially in the YA genre, which is what I usually read. I try and do my best to read as many as I can. I haven't read a lot, but my main passion is still fantasy, so I still generally gravitate towards fantasy. But today I just wanted to recommend some war-based books for you guys to read, so let's get into it. So it wouldn't be a historical fiction recommendations video without The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. This is written by an Australian author, and this is probably one of the most unique stories I think I've ever read, mainly because of how it is written. Most people probably already know about this, but if you don't, this story is written from the perspective of death. So it's the three times that Death meets Liesl throughout her life, or comes close to meeting Liesl throughout her life. This book is set in World War II, 1939 in Nazi-occupied Germany, and it's a very hard read, especially because we start out following Liesl when she's, I think, about 9. So the shit that is going down is something that a 9-year-old should never have to deal with or see or face. But yeah, it's definitely a very hard hitting book, but it is extremely well written, and throughout the pages there's little sections that are directly like Death talking to the reader. So on the first page it says, "Here is a small fact. You are going to die." So that's another interesting way that the author put across this story, because yes, it's narrated by Death, but it's also got little hints of Death speaking about the things that are happening, not just what he is seeing. So I'm gonna say he, I don't know, that's what it feels like. But yeah, super interesting book, and I highly recommend it if you are interested in something that's probably going to make you cry. I need to reread this, honestly, and annotate it, because I wasn't annotating books when I read this. But I need to do that. And I just need to reread it because it was amazing. So the next book I want to recommend is Mouse by Art Spiegelman. This is the complete Mouse. There's actually 2 parts, but this one has both in it. And I highly recommend this. This is a graphic novel, and this is actually non-fiction. So this follows Art Spiegelman's father and what he experienced during the Holocaust. He was a Jew, so obviously not the best time to be a Jew. So this just follows him, and it's got like the 2 timelines. So it's got Art Spiegelman visiting his father and trying to get the story from him, and then it's also got the story itself. And as this is non-fiction, and like most of the books on this, actually I think all the books but this one are all fiction, but they're impactful as it is. But I think it takes it a little bit step further when you know you've got that in your brain that this is non-fiction, and then this is exactly what happened to this person. Because it's one thing to experience it as fiction, like you know these things happened, but that exact storyline may not have, whereas this one, you know 100% that is exactly what happened. So it makes it a little bit harder to read. There was a lot of times where I was emotional in this, but it's well and truly worth the read. And I love the art style. It's very simple. It's all black and white, and if you can see here on the cover, the Jews are mice and then the Germans are cats. The illustrator has used a different animal for each, group, so that made it interesting. It was just that little bit of an added element. But yeah, I really enjoyed reading this. Well, enjoyed isn't the right word, and I'm gonna feel like shit saying enjoyed about most of these books, but I enjoyed the experience. I did not enjoy the content of the book, but that is because it is war and it is horrible. But yeah, I highly recommend Mouse, and it's a not easy, but it's an easier way to get into historical fiction. Being a graphic novel, it makes it a little bit easier to read. And yeah, so if you're looking for a jump into historical fiction, I recommend this one, but do note going into it that it is non-fiction and it is brutal. So the next book, and I'm swapping arms because for some reason this shoulder is killing me. The next book is Traitors Gate by Michael Ridpath. This is a Ridpath, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but this is a World War II historical fiction, and it is an adult work, and this is also a very unique book to me, because you feel like most of the historical fictions, especially around World War II, are all set during the war, like during the shit happening, whereas this one is set leading up to Hitler declaring war. So let me just read what's on the back. There's two sections on the back. There's the part in red, which is a letter, and then the white. So the bit in red says, "Dearest father, by the time you receive this letter, he will be dead. The newspapers will say that his assassin was an unknown German officer. It wasn't. It was me." Berlin, 1938. Himmler's black-shirted troops march in the streets. The Swarovski files from every building, but not every heart belongs to Hitler. A few brave men are determined to stop the march towards a war they know they cannot win. They are united by a single ambition, to free the fatherland from the foe. That gives you the general idea. So it's basically the lead up to an assassination attempt on Hitler, and it is really interesting seeing the other side of the German troops and the other side of the timeline, so before war was actually declared. It's just a very interesting way to go into the World War II story, and it does show that other side of things, because a lot of books, especially if the main character is not a German soldier, it generally depicts that the Germans are horrible. Like, even like the odd occasion there'll be one or two that's like not bad, but in an overall feel they're the bad guys, whereas this one is not the case. This is Germany divided, and it's a really interesting way to read the story, and I really enjoyed it. There is some other aspects, like there's a little bit of romance in here as well, so I highly recommend it if you want something a little bit different but still based around World War II. I recommend this one. So the next one is The Tattoos of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. This one I feel is a little bit either you hate it or you love it, and while I agree with a lot of people just say the writing was absolutely horrible, I don't 100% agree, but I do agree that it is not the best writing I've ever read for the actual writing itself, but the story for me makes up for it. I'm not sure where the fuck my tongue was yesterday when I was trying to record this, but I don't have any idea what the fuck I was trying to say. And I'm sick of editing it. Like, I've got like a split and then a little bit of footage and a split and a little bit of footage, a split and a little bit of footage, because I keep fucking up my words. So, this book, The Tattoos of Auschwitz, is based on a true story. So the author actually interviewed, I can't remember if it was the guy or the girl who this story is about. I'm pretty sure it was the guy, and got the story of what he went through while he was in Auschwitz and how he became a tattooist. He was a Jew, but he became a tattooist in the Auschwitz camp to try and, you know, get some better life for himself, because the ones that, you know, cooperated and went along with the plans of the Germans got a little bit of benefit out of it, and he does a few other things in the camp. So yeah, it's just the story of his life in Auschwitz. And yeah, moving on. This is very, very graphically brutal when it comes to what was actually happening in Auschwitz. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This book was devastating. Like, as I've researched myself, a lot of things that happened during the war, but this puts into this perspective of how those things actually happened. Not just that they happened, but how it happened and how it started. So it was a little bit intense. I'll agree with that. It was a little bit intense, but I still not enjoyed it, but I do not regret reading this at all. If you are on the light-hearted side, I would not recommend this book to you, purely because it is very, very real and very graphic and very intense. And yeah, that's the only way I can describe it. So the last book I want to talk about, which I don't actually have a copy of because I still haven't bought it. I really need to do that. But I listened to this one on audiobook, and I do highly recommend the audiobook. But it is Salt to the Sea by Rita Sepetys. So this book is based around a maritime disaster that happened during World War II that not many people know about, and there's not much research out there about it. So this author has basically discovered this disaster and written a story around it. And there's a part in the end of this book that I don't have the physical copy, so I can't read it word for word. In the back, there's, like, in the author's notes, she describes how she came about this story and some of the actual real life facts about this story. And in the back of the book, the one thing I remember is it saying that when it comes to the death toll, this maritime disaster was worse than the Titanic. So that puts it a little bit in perspective about why we should probably know about this, considering how much we do know about the Titanic. But we don't know anything about this boat sinking during World War II and killing thousands. And in this book we follow, I think it's 4, but it might be 3. I can't 100% remember how many points of view we follow, but I know there's like 4 major characters. We follow people from all different places, basically trying to escape the war, get on this boat that is promised salvation. And we follow, I'm pretty sure we follow a Polish girl, we follow someone from Slovakia, I think there's a German soldier as well who I could not stand. Like, I know the German soldiers are meant to be the bad guys, but this bloke, oh my god, literally I wanted to punch him in the throat. It wasn't because he was evil, he was just an arrogant fucking asshole. Like, could not stand him. This is one of those characters that you enjoy purely because he was written so well that you feel yourself hating him. Like, you've never met this bloke. This bloke does not exist, but you fucking hate them with a passion. That's how I judge my villains. Not that he's a villain, like I said, he's just a fucking asshole. Anyways, yeah, I highly recommend this one. It shows a different side of the struggle. Each of these books really show the different side of the struggles throughout mostly World War II. And I highly recommend the audiobook as well. It's got a full cast narration to follow each of the main characters, and it was done very well. Highly recommend the audiobook, highly recommend this book. And of course, my SD card went full just as I was about to do this outro. So yeah, I think that's all the books I want to recommend today. I've got 5 books there. All of them I'm pretty sure are actually World War II. So this is kind of actually a World War II recommendations video. I really need to try and find some World War I books and also, you know, set on other wars, but haven't got around to doing that. In case you were wondering, these pins that I have on my shirt, every year there's always people out on the street selling Anzac Day pins, and the 2 I have on right now are the Slouch Hat and, the Slouch Hat and the Rising Sun. The Rising Sun is to commemorate those who fought in Gallipoli, and a Slouch Hat is basically just to commemorate the Australian soldiers, as this was the hat that the Diggers wore throughout most of the wars. I'm pretty sure this hat is very distinguished to Australian soldiers. So yeah, that's what those 2 badges are. I've got many more. So yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys for the next one.